Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 443 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, my family's favorite show is definitely Shark Tank. We've been watching this show from the very beginning, probably because I'm a serial entrepreneur and I love hearing about new businesses. Plus, the show is funny with all the sharks, and my wife and I actually worked with Barbara Corcoran in the past in selling our New York home. Our next guest was on Shark Tank, and his show and the conversation that resulted in my family from that show really motivated our kids to excel in school and ultimately on their ACT scores as well. I am proud to say that my daughter got a perfect score in her ACT, and now that's opened up all kinds of great opportunities for her to go to her dream school this fall in September. So let's talk to our next guest. In high school, Shaan Patel was like most kids. He was a good student who got A's and B's. However, he was a poor standardized test taker. Shaan had a lot of test anxiety. He had no idea how to prepare for standardized exams, and he received only an average score in his first SAT. After spending hundreds of hours studying the SAT in high school, Shaan raised his SAT score 640 points from average to perfect. Only 0.02 of all high school students achieve a perfect SAT score. Shaan's perfect SAT score completely changed his life. He received admission to top universities in the country and over $500,000 in college scholarships. Now, Dr. Shaan Patel has created Prep Expert to help high school students achieve their own dreams. Prep Expert has helped more than 100,000 students improve their SAT and ACT scores, get into top colleges, and win over $100 million in scholarships. Prep Expert offers online SAT and ACT scores, academic tutoring, and college admissions consulting. Welcome to the show, Shaan.
Hey, Mike, thanks for the introduction. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited that you are on the show because I remember your show like it was yesterday. I remember everything about it. I can't wait to get into it. But before we get into your show on Shark Tank, you grew up in your family's Las Vegas motel. You went to a public school in Las Vegas where the high school dropout rate was nearly 40%. And eventually you boosted your SAT score to a perfect score. Now, that is the dream for so many high school students around the country. How did you go about boosting it to a perfect score?
Yeah, great question. So the exact method that I used was I basically locked myself in the library this summer between my 11th grade year and my 12th grade year. And I did over 20 official SAT exams. And what I did was I actually created what's called an SAT Insight Notebook. And I figured out which strategies worked for me, which ones didn't work for me, what content I needed to know, why I got certain questions right and wrong. And I documented all of that in my personal insights. What's funny is that insight notebook turned into my first SAT prep book and curriculum for all of our courses. And so if I hadn't done that in high school, I don't think I'd have a business today. So kind of funny story.
I love that story. It's just absolutely incredible. And ultimately, you chose USC for your undergraduate experience after being admitted to a bunch of top universities, over $500,000 in scholarships. I guess I'm wondering, why did you choose USC over some of the other schools you could have gone to?
Yeah, great question. I got into the Ivy League. I got into schools like Johns Hopkins, Berkeley, Northwestern, really top tier programs. But ultimately, I decided to go to the University of Southern California because they gave me a full ride scholarship. So, I didn't have to pay a dime for tuition, housing, books, food, or any other college related expenses. They paid for everything. I was kind of like the academic Reggie Bush at USC, but legally, not illegally.
I love that. See, that's kind of where we're stuck right now, is that my daughter does have a full ride offer to go to a great school. But then, you're kind of counterbalancing it with the Ivy League options, and it's hard to know like what is the best route, and I think there's multiple routes to success if we really, are honest about all of this. But it's just hard to know, like, do we go for the full ride, have zero debt, which is more important than ever because the cost of college is so expensive, or do you take advantage of that name brand and will that network ultimately lead to a better path? And I don't know what's right.
Yeah, in my personal case, I think I was willing to take the name brand a little bit out, knowing that I was going to go to graduate school. So I ended up going to Yale University for my MBA. And so I got that quote unquote brand name later. So it
Right.
depends on if your daughter is going to be doing grad school later. That's more cost, more tuition, but also an opportunity to do maybe the brand name on the graduate school side and take the full ride now. So that was kind of my decision. I don't know if it's helpful for your daughter, but
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. And hopefully she has a long career in higher education and she becomes a lifelong learner. I'm in a doctorate program right now. So, I'm hoping that by teaching her those lessons that she will go to grad school and maybe she goes to an Ivy, like you said, for a master's degree or a doctorate degree down the road. And you're this founder of Prep Expert, which I absolutely love what it is that you're doing. Talk to our audience about how you even got onto the show Shark Tank and what was that experience like in closing a deal with the shark of all sharks, Mark Cuban?
Yeah, great question. And so, I was just a fan of Shark Tank like everyone else. This was back in 2015. And I was watching the show one day and I thought to myself, I've got a great small business. It's just a small test prep company right now in Vegas, but it's doubling year over year revenue. And I really want to expand it nationally, take it online, do some more marketing, hire more people. It would be perfect for this show. I could get some investment to help me scale the company, do a strategic partnership with one of the sharks. And so I saw that they were doing auditions actually in New York City. And I was at Yale at the time, so I was in New Haven, Connecticut, so not too far. Took the 2 hour Metro North train down, and I was one of the last people in line to do an audition for Shark Tank. You had 1 minute only, and the casting call producer was totally unimpressed during my 1 minute pitch. But at the very last part of my pitch, I pulled out my book at the end. And he couldn't believe that, my face was on this SAT prep book, that, it had sold 50,000 copies. He was just so impressed with the, just being an author. He asked me if he could have the book for his nephew. I said, of course. And so, they ended up calling me back 2 weeks later and flying me out to LA to be on the show. Ended up closing a deal with Mark Cuban. We ended up doing $250,000 for 20% equity. I went in asking for 10% equity, but Mark, he had to negotiate up, and that was my limit anyway. So, but it's been an amazing, journey with Mark Cuban. They've opened up so many opportunities in terms of business partnerships, licensing deals. We've co-authored entrepreneurship books together. We've co-hosted entrepreneurship panels. We've co-invested in other education companies. So it's really been a dream come true working with Mark Cuban and his team.
Yeah, it seems like he's really hands-on and he's got a team of people that you can call or email at any time, which is really wonderful to see. So it seems like he was the right shark for you, and clearly it's been very successful. So that's amazing. And now you've helped 100,000, over 100,000 students prep for standardized testing. Talk about your business because I think this is interesting for college students that are entrepreneurs themselves. What is your business secret in terms of reaching that many clients for the business?
Yeah, so my business, I think this would be interesting for the college students listening. It actually started off in college, it started off as a side hustle in terms of I wrote all this content and curriculum, and the very first course that I ever taught was actually, I guess it was, I had built it up my senior year of college, and then it was the summer right after I had finished graduating college. And so the way that I reached clients initially is different than how I reach clients now. So, when you're initially starting off a side hustle or a business, I really think that you have to offer a lot of value for low cost or for free, even sometimes, in order to get leads in the door. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's how I grew my business in the beginning. It was low cost courses, low cost tutoring. and we got a lot of leads that way. We offer a lot of free workshops, things like that. Um, and what grew the business for the first 5 years was simply word of mouth. So when you have a great product or you have a great service, you can really depend on word of mouth for that initial growth because your clients and your customers will hopefully be happy with their service or your product and tell other clients and customers, and you can incentivize that, etc. So I literally spent $0 on marketing the first 5 years of the business. And it was funny because on Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary asked me, what's your customer acquisition cost? And, I said, I don't know. But the reality was I didn't know because it was $0. I didn't spend anything on marketing at that time. But now if you want to scale to the 100,000 plus clients as I have, you do have to start, spending some marketing ad dollars. And for us, our main customer acquisition model is through digital marketing. So using Facebook advertising and Google advertising. And you really do then, as Kevin O'Leary asked me very astutely, you have to keep track of your customer acquisition cost, make sure that you're generating a good return on ad spend. But I wouldn't recommend that in the initial stages. Usually I would recommend free or low cost marketing methods, especially when you're just getting started up, as I was in the first 5 years of the business. We didn't spend any ad dollars until, year six, basically.
Yeah, you not knowing the customer acquisition cost, I think that's where you lost Kevin O'Leary. He wants to know that you know those numbers. And if you said zero, then I think that would have been a positive, right?
Yeah, I missed my opportunity, but
You missed
Mark
it.
Cuban's great too.
Yeah, Mark Cuban is great too. And I guess Mark Cuban's team, they really kind of helped you in terms of setting up those Google ad spends and the Facebook ad spends. Is that kind of where you got that help to scale the business there online?
Yeah, so what's nice about working with Mark Cuban is you get direct access to Mark, so you can email him at any time, and it's pretty incredible. I'm pretty sure he does this for all Shark Tank entrepreneurs and anyone he works with. I think he does 800 or 1,000 emails a day, so you'll get a response within 10 minutes, which is pretty. He does no meetings basically unless it's a really special event, which makes sense given the hundreds of investments he has. But the other aspect is what you were saying is you also get access to Mark Cuban companies, the team. So they've helped me set up, more formalized accounting processes, business development processes, licensing deals, and to your point, digital marketing as well. So they really helped us get the Google ads and Facebook accounts set up in the beginning, and then we've scaled it since.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you, I think you're the right guy to ask because my daughter is in this application process right now, trying to decide, is she going to go to Ivy League schools? Is she going to go to kind of, the small Ivies as they call them? Why are so many colleges and universities now suddenly reinstating their standardized test requirements after they just got rid of it a couple of years ago?
Yeah, great question. There's this huge trend now over the past few months of big universities, Yale, Dartmouth, Brown, even the University of Texas at Austin, which, gets almost 100,000 applications a year, just reinstated SAT and ACT requirements. So we have to look back at why they got rid of them. Originally, they got rid of them due to the pandemic, right? So because of pandemic rules, students weren't allowed to be in the same testing center at the same time, so they just went optional. Obviously, that's all gone now. So, it makes a lot of sense why many universities are bringing them back. And if you think about it I know there's a lot of controversy on standardized tests, whether they're fair or not, etc. However, what was super interesting about Yale, Dartmouth, all these research studies that they did with admissions is they actually found that removing test scores actually hurt low income and underprivileged students the most, right? And Yale's blog post said, this is going to sound counterintuitive to most people, but to me, it's perfectly intuitive and probably to you too, because if you think about it, if you remove test scores, what are you going to value more? You're going to value extracurricular activities more. And who can afford the best summer programs? Who can afford to start nonprofits? Who can play sports like water polo, lacrosse, et cetera? It's going to be wealthier families generally,
Mhm.
right? And so, but any kid can go to a library with an SAT or ACT book and self-study. I mean, that's literally my story, right? And so it's not going to be easy. It's not as fun as scrolling TikTok or watching YouTube, but for those that want to put the work in, it's certainly an opportunity. And of course, there's tutors like my company, Prep Expert, out there that can give you even more of a leg up, but certainly it can be done for free or low cost as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And yeah, my parents are also from another country. They're from Israel. So yeah, I mean, it makes total sense to me that for you, taking the test was something that you could do as a kid. And I was the same way. I got the book and I just started taking as many exams as I could. It was repetition, repetition, repetition. That's what I could afford. I didn't have money. My parents didn't have money to get me to go to all these fancy extracurricular. They were busting their hump working themselves, so it's not like they could even have the time to take me to all of these things. All I had
Yeah.
was a book. That's what I
Yeah. Yeah.
had.
Oh, and congratulations to your daughter for getting a perfect ACT score. That's super rare. That's pretty amazing. You got a smart family over there. She got your
Yeah,
gene.
yeah. We definitely have the smart genes, which is good. Now our health is a whole different story, but smarts and brains, we got that in spades. There's no problem with that. So, also I want to talk about debt because this is a really, really important conversation, especially as I'm looking at some of the costs of some of these universities. I mean, my daughter is certainly looking at some of the schools in Boston and, looking at like Boston University, Boston College. I mean, these universities, the sticker price is now $95,000 a year. I remember when people were freaking out when tuition costs were like $70,000 a year. Now we're at like 95. And you're on a $1 billion scholarship mission to reduce college costs and college debt. And all the students that I'm working with all over the country in college, they're all stressed about the debt that they are taking on. I mean, we are loading on so much debt on these kids. It's just not right. So, what are some tips for college students in order to reduce their costs and debt in college?
Yeah, great question. It's definitely a problem. You know, the average college cost now is over 200,000. Like you said, there's some universities where it's almost $100,000 a year to attend now. Student debt is near 2 trillion. I think it's at 1.7 trillion in the United States. And so for me, when people think about standardized tests, they think about college admissions, but I actually think standardized tests are more important in terms of scholarships and merit-based scholarships specifically. So my real mission, as I mentioned, I'm on a $1 billion mission to help students win merit-based scholarships through their test scores because there are like 7 billion, I would say, scholarships a year handed out by universities, handed out by private companies like Coca-Cola, Toyota, McDonald's to high achieving students who are high merit. What does that mean? That means high grades, which is most students get straight A's or A's and B's. Actually, 47% of all high school students graduate with an A average now. So your GPA is not going to differentiate you. But after that, it's going to be your standardized test scores and your extracurricular activities. So reducing your costs that way, I mean, it's the best because I love when parents and families like your daughter gets a full ride somewhere. I mean, totally changes her life as it did for me, or a half tuition scholarship. Now, for the students who are in college right now, who didn't get those opportunities, and didn't get a half tuition, full tuition scholarship, and have a lot of debt that's piling on, you can still win scholarships and to reduce your cost of college. Now, I will be very honest with you. There are fewer scholarships for existing college students than there are for high school students, which is why I always try to have it done in high school as a senior or a junior. But if you're in college, there are plenty of scholarships out there that you can search for. One of my main scholarship tips is look for local scholarships in your area. So let's say you're going to college in where I did, New Haven, Connecticut, right? So I was there for grad school. I would look for scholarships in the Connecticut area, in the New Haven area. Even small scholarships that are $5,000, $10,000 can make a huge impact on your education and help you reduce that cost of college. And then, of course, the second piece of advice I have to reduce your cost of college is do a side hustle in college. College is one of the best opportunities because you generally have more time than you did in high school and you have more time than doing a full-time job. Start up a side hustle. There's so many now with digital tools and AI coming out that, even if it doesn't work out, it's not a huge risk. But if it does work out and you make 5, 10, 20, $40,000 a year, you can really offset your college costs.
Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think every college student should have some side hustle going on. And this is the time to be risky. This is the time to try something totally off the wall to see if it sticks. Because later in life, you're not going to have that risk tolerance. But while you're in college, you might hit it. You might absolutely hit it. So I agree with you 100%. I think that's super smart to start that side hustle in college. And I love that idea about searching locally for the existing college students to find some, local scholarships. I mean, is there a place they should go in order to find local scholarships like the ones you're talking about?
Yeah, there are search engines like Scholaroo and FastWeb where you can narrow down by state.
Uh-huh.
However, you really want to just go to Google and type in scholarships for college students in your state or in your city. And the reason for that is the reason that local scholarships are worth applying to is they have fewer applications. And when you have fewer applications, because only people in your city can apply, you have a much higher chance of winning. It's a lot harder to win a scholarship that's open to the entire nation because you got tens of thousands, sometimes over 100,000 applications. So it's like trying to win the lottery, which is why I recommend going locally if you can. But I love what you said about, starting a side hustle in college and taking the risk.
Yeah.
It's totally what I did with Prep Expert. I had no idea if it was going to work or not. And now we've done over $50 million in revenue. We've been on Shark Tank. And so, college students, you just never know. Start that side hustle, even if it doesn't turn into a huge success, even if it helps you pay off a little bit of college, or even if it fails, you will often learn skills to start your next business in the future, and you'll have a head start that way.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And for those people who don't know, who know me personally, really, I have an accounting degree and I was bored to tears doing debits and credits. Let me tell you, right out of college, I thought this was the most boring job ever. And I started a side hustle, basically after my first or second job after college. I was basically just doing web design and search engine optimization before search engine optimization was even like a term. Like nobody had even talked about it. But I just figured, okay, here's Google. Can I just organically get my websites to raise to the top of Google for certain keywords? And just trial and error, I figured it out. And then I started offering that service to other local business owners, and we were killing it. And it got to the point where at this point, now I'm CFO of a technology company in Manhattan, and I'm making more money at night and on the weekends in my side hustle doing search engine optimization than I was during the day as CFO in Manhattan. I showed my wife
Wow.
all the checks and I was like, I think it's time to start a business. And she's like, yeah, let's go.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I remember the good old SEO days. That's how my business took off in the beginning too, is we would optimize and be able to land on the front page of Google for a lot of key terms. And it's too bad Google doesn't it doesn't work that easily anymore.
Yeah, you can't
Yeah.
manipulate Google as easily as you could way back when in the beginning. And you could actually, in the very beginning of Google, it was actually pretty easy to manipulate. And I was just doing it for all kinds of small businesses, and we had huge success. But now, of course, Google wants you to pay for that ranking, and so they figured out how to monetize that. So it's not like the good old days. And eventually, I got out of the SEO business and out of the web design business because now we have tools that do that really kind of automatically. You think of AI, you can tell AI to build you a website and it'll be done in less than 30 seconds, right? So what's the need anymore for web design? So I guess, the moral of the story is you kind of have to be all over the trends and understand the technology and kind of know when to get out, right? I mean, that's the other part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah, you got to evolve for sure, and see what trends and technologies are coming that could disrupt you,
Yeah.
predict that, and pivot appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, you can write, a whole master's thesis paper about businesses that, didn't figure out the technology and how it was going to disrupt their business. I was just talking to college students about Kodak because I went to school at the University of Buffalo. Kodak is headquartered in Rochester, less than an hour away, and they used to have huge facilities where they would make actual photographs for everybody, in the world. But now, when they went digital, Instagram just came in and ate their lunch, and now everything is digital. And they couldn't really understand that the whole, market was going to shift towards digital photography, and they couldn't wrap their heads around it. And now the business is essentially gone, except for, some people that want to try, making their own photographs, and it's like a childhood thing. But anyway, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, you got to
I
really
feel
look
bad for
into it.
Kodak. Everyone uses them as an example, but
I
there
mean,
must be some other
it's
ones.
classic. It's
Yeah.
classic. You can look at Blockbuster is another
Yeah.
example
Blockbuster's a
that
good
really
one.
didn't understand the technology that we could go directly to your TV with Netflix instead of going to the store. And then they have all of this, brick and mortar stores that are basically worthless. And then, even looking at like the New York City yellow cabs, I was born in New York City,
Mhm.
and the New
Yeah.
York City yellow cabs, people were paying $100,000 just to have that medallion on their cab. And now it's basically worthless because
Yeah.
Uber and Lyft came in and ate their lunch. So you kind of always have to be looking at technology and figure out how's that going to disrupt your business. If you don't pay attention to those things, boy, oh boy, I mean, talk about a difficult lesson, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Great examples. Yeah, I didn't think about those other ones.
Oh yeah, they're all out there. There's no question about it. I also wanted to talk to you about your recent entrepreneurship panel you co-hosted to underprivileged youth in Chicago who are becoming entrepreneurs. And this was all done on behalf of the Obama Foundation. Talk to us more about this entrepreneurship panel. What's that all about?
Yeah, that was really cool. So it was for underprivileged youth in Chicago. Mark Cuban actually invited myself and a couple other Shark Tank entrepreneurs out to inspire youth to become entrepreneurs. And this is really a mission that Mark and I share, and I'm sure Mike, you share it as well, which is to inspire youth to become entrepreneurs. Because, one thing that when I was growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up too, um, entrepreneur was not really a career path, it was like you either became a doctor, a lawyer, a fireman, things like that. It's like when people ask you what you want to be when you want to grow up, right? And so I really think that becoming an entrepreneur is one of the best jobs in the world. It's also one of the hardest jobs in the world. Don't get me wrong. But the reward that you get from working for yourself, the freedom that you get, the flexibility, the creativity. I absolutely love it. And so what we tried to do in the panel was explain to youth, one, that this is a real career path. I mean, some of the youth had never even heard of ChatGPT. I mean, these are people that really could use the inspiration. So one, that it is a career path. Two, that it's not going to be an easy career path because I think a lot of times in pop culture today and on social media, entrepreneurs are celebrated like the rock stars, and it looks so, glamorous, but underneath there's a lot of hard work, there's a lot of lonely nights, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so that's really what I try to communicate is that, it's a great path to walk on, but you got to earn it. And if you're willing to earn it, the sky is the limit.
I love it. Now, you're also a board certified dermatologist, and I remember your episode. You said that you still wanted to practice twice a week as a dermatologist, and then suddenly you had sharks that were dropping out. So, are you still practicing as a board certified dermatologist?
Yeah, I proved all the sharks wrong. Yeah, so I do still practice as a dermatologist, but I only do teledermatology. So it's very similar to, meeting on Zoom, like for this podcast or for, seeing patients, etc. Dermatology lends itself quite well for virtual meetings because I can usually tell from a person's pictures or videos, their skin rash, what we need to prescribe them Obviously, if they need a biopsy, I do an in-person referral. But yeah, so basically, actually a few days a week, I do teledermatology appointments, and then the rest of the time I'm acting as the CEO of Prep Expert. So I am happy to give an update to all your listeners that I did prove all the sharks wrong. I am a doctor and an entrepreneur and living my dream life. And I hope many of the students here can take some inspiration for that to live their own dream lives.
Yeah, you did prove them wrong, and I love it. I mean, you were really stuck to your guns. You said, "No, I want to practice twice a week," and you had doubters. They just didn't believe in you, and you know what? You did it anyway. So good for you.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. Trust me, going through med school residency, it wasn't easy, but with a business, but we made it work. And I have to give a lot of credit to my team. I mean, my operations, customer service, sales teams that ran the business while I was super busy. You got to have an amazing team if you really want to grow a business. I'm sure you know, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. So the next time I'm out in Las Vegas speaking, where should I go for a great meal these days?
Oh man, it's hard to get a reservation, but if you can get in a Carbone, I mean, I know they have one in New York too, but
Yes.
yeah, the spicy rigatoni there is unbeatable. Yeah, you got to book a reservation a few months in advance though.
I will. Carbone a few months in advance. I got you. All right. So if our listeners, if they want to improve their standardized test taking skills one-on-one with private tutoring, let's say for grad school, like the GRE, I think is something that we can get them into. Where should they go in order to get better standardized test taking skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the college students listening who are taking the GRE, the MCAT, any of those grad school tests, or applying to medical school or law school, we offer admissions consulting for, grad school as well. Head over to prepexpert.com. And if you do have a sibling who needs SAT or ACT courses, they're fully online, they're live, they're taught by 99th percentile instructors. We have the best score improvement guarantees in the industry. You can find all of our course schedules and offerings at prepexpert.com.
That's it, prepexpert.com. Thank you, Dr. Shaan Patel, for sharing your story with us. I wish you nothing but success in the future. It was great chatting with you today.
Yeah, Mike, this was a lot of fun. Appreciate it and hope to be on again soon.
That sounds good. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Dr. Shaan Patel, I want you to like it. I want you to share it with other college students that are trying to get into grad school. Maybe they're going into med school. Maybe they're going to law school. Share it with those students. And if you have younger brothers or sisters that are trying to get into college, please share it with them as well. Get that link and send it over to them. So thank you so much. This has been great to our listeners. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.